Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Really appreciate everyone who's decided to tune in. Thank you so much for this. Please do me a favor, make sure that you hit that rate, subscribe, and share button. So just to catch everyone up what's going on. So this is going to be the new channel that we're going to be discussing police related issues, right? So before we were talking about them on Captain Hunter's podcast, I am changing the name of that podcast to Hunter's Podcast. And the reason I'm changing the name of the show to Hunter's Podcast is because I really want to focus on dealing with young men, right? So young men, their issues, dealing with maybe some self-limiting ideas about themselves, things along those lines. So I really wanted to really focus in on those things. Really wanted to that's what I want to do. I want to focus on those things, right? Because as a young man, I grew up, I didn't have a father. I did have positive, strong male role models in my life who helped guide me, steer me in the right way. I had, deacons at my church. I had uncles. I was part of clubs and things along those lines. But I think it's very, very important that young men have guiding role models and principles. So those young men who may be dealing with some issues growing up, they don't have a father, they don't have anyone to talk to, they don't have coaches, they don't have anyone, right? They're trying to figure out this thing on their own, right? There's a lot of single mothers out there who are trying to raise their children up to be the best that they can be. And I want to really lend my voice into helping these young men and become the young men that they should be, the positive male role models that they should be. On that end, what I did was I released a video talking about the Jayland Walker situation. The Jayland Walker situation being that, the situation from Akron, Ohio, in which a young man was driving down the street and refused to stop for police officers. Once he refused to stop for these police officers, they ended up firing at him. He ran from the vehicle, obviously ended up shooting and killing him dead. So I released a video talking about that. I released it on the Hunter's Podcast because I thought it was very essential to talk to the young men and to their aunts and to their uncles and to their mothers and to their cousins, to their step parents, and to talk to all these different entities that have influence on these young men's lives and tell them the first thing that we can do and we should do is pull over and stop. Well, the first thing we should do is make sure that we are operating our vehicles safely and in the prescribed manner that's according to law. Make sure you have your license on you. Make sure that you have the vehicle that they are about to step behind or sit behind the wheel is registered, insured, both headlights are working, both taillights are working, the blinkers are on, they have their seatbelts on, they're not blaring attention getting music from their cars at high decibels and all that. And for some reason, this still seems to be a very controversial topic when we try to hold our young men accountable for these types of actions. Now, listen, this is a sensitive subject, and I'm not trying to throw dirt on young Jayland's name. I'm not trying to do anything along those lines. What I am trying to do is use this as a teaching opportunity to other young men out there to first and foremost be legit. Second is to make sure that you comply with the officers. And somehow this is, I was called victim blaming. I was called disgusting. And listen, I can take all that. That's not an issue. But the problem is that we have to address this attitude and this culture that we have within ourselves, that yes, the police should change. I've done many videos about that. I've talked about that. You can go back to the podcast and listen to all those videos that I have about those types of things. And you can hear and see that I've suggested that we do what we have to do and what we can do and should do in order to make that the police departments are making the proper changes. And they've listened. This is where we get body cameras at. This is where we get dash cam videos at. This is why they've changed the laws in some jurisdictions, including Akron here, where they have to release the body cam footage within a certain amount of days. This is where transparency, this is where we're getting the press conferences from. This is where we're getting tasers from, right? Instead of always going to the most lethal weapon, right? We have intermediary steps that officers are taking, right? We got bans on chokeholds. While we couldn't get anything in the national level, we get some things at state levels, right? So if you, in certain states, right, if an officer gets fired or resigns from their commission while under investigation, then that means they can't apply for another job within that particular state. So there's a lot of things that have been happening that we've asked the law enforcement to do and to take a look at themselves, and they've listened and they're doing those things, and they should be praised when they do those things. And at the same time, we have to ask the community to step up and do what they need to do. And the community needs to hold their children accountable. their young men accountable. This man was 25 years old, right? I keep calling him a young man. Well, he is a young man according to me, but he's still old enough. He should have been old enough to know right and wrong. Again, I'm not trying to throw dirt in the man's name. I'm really not. I'm really not. But we have other 25-year-olds, other 24-year-olds, other 18-year-olds out there who need this proper guidance and be told, listen, before you get behind the wheel of a car, you need to make sure it's legit. And the other thing you need to do is when and if you are stopped, you can have your cell phone out, but make sure that you are complying with the officers. Don't get out and run. I mean, listen, and yes, I hear the complaints that when and if our young men get out and run, that they should have the opportunity to be taken back into custody or taken into custody without being shot in the back and things along those lines. I totally agree. I have a black son. I get it. I have a black son and two black stepsons. I completely understand this way of thinking, and I want them to be safe. I don't want them to be racially profiled. I don't want them to be stopped because they're driving while black. I don't want any of that stuff to happen. I really don't want that to happen to anyone. But we've got to be honest about what we're doing. We've got to be honest about these things. And so we've got to hold our young men accountable when and if these things happen. And we can't just have accountability for police officers. We've got to have accountability for our actions. So I released that video, got this pushback. So let's fast forward to today's video right here. So today's video, we're going to talk about, we're going to look at, take a brief look at the press conference. Well, first thing we're going to take a look at is the body cam footage, right? So it was first reports were that he was unarmed and that there was no shots fired. Well, now we know, according to the press conference, according to what they released, that there was a gun that was found on the scene, and we're going to watch a video in which we can see and hear an apparent shot from the car. We hear the apparent shot first, and then we will see the muzzle flash from the vehicle. The pursuit goes on. The pursuit then stops. We see about 8 officers. I think there's like 13 body cam footage cameras. I'm not sure about that number. But we can see a number of officers running up, and they all start firing at Mr. Walker. He obviously collapses and dies on the scene. So we'll watch these things first, and then we'll get going from there.
Stop this traffic and equipment violation.
There was a shot fire right there.
On to 8 South from Talmadge. Reason for stop was traffic and equipment violation.
Shot fired.
All cars in effect.
21 shots fired. That vehicle just had a shot come out of its door.
At the time of the sound, a flash of light can be seen along the driver's side of the suspect vehicle.
Okay, so the next recording we're going to do is going to be just one perspective of the many of the officers, right? So a number of officers are all wearing body cams. They all kind of run up and do what they got to do. So we're gonna display that, just one of the perspectives. Now, also, what I want the particular perspective that I'm going to show is you're going to see what I believe to be a senior officer. He's going to be saying ceasefire, ceasefire, giving the hand motions and as well as saying it. Again, this is what I'm going to address in a little bit, is about the noise problem, the training, the noise problems and things along those lines. And I'll address that a little bit after the video. But I also want to bring your attention to is, what are these officers seeing? Why are they firing? And things along those lines. So that's really, really going to be important as to what these officers saw when they got out of the car, right? So let's get into that.
We're passing Evergreen. We're heading towards Maine. Looks like we have some units up ahead at the intersection of Maine. He's slowing down here, slowing down. Slowing down.
car! Get the fuck!
Okay, what I really want to stress from this point on is the press conference, and I want to echo what the chief said in the press conference. And I'll leave the links up here. I'm not going to play these particular portions. Actually, you know, I will play the portion of the press conference because I want to echo what the chief said here. If I can find it here, let me see here. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some of the video here, and there's going to be a pretty good question that's going to be asked here. So I want to play the video and show just a little bit of the press conference, and I think that the chief obviously nails it.
Seeing this very exciting video, what is it to you, or for you, what is the most concerning thing in the footage that you've seen so far?
So let me just reiterate this for the audio. So the member from the press is asking, what is the most concerning thing that you've seen just from the video? And the chief is about to answer right here.
Same thing that's most concerning to everybody else that just watched it. I'm going to say this. When an officer makes the most critical decision in his or her life as a police officer, it doesn't matter where in the country this happens, when they make that most critical decision to point their firearm at another human being and pull the trigger, they've got to be ready to explain why they did what they did. They need to be able to articulate what specific threats they were facing. And that goes for every round that goes down the barrel of their gun. And they need to be held to account. Right now, as you pointed out, we're in the early stages of the investigation. The officers have not been able to provide a statement yet. I am reserving any sort of judgment until we hear from them.
Okay, so here's what the chief is saying. You will see a number of officers. There are 8 who have been placed on administrative leave, right? So here's what he's saying, is that every one of those officers that came up and started firing, if you watch the full video, I'm not going to show it again, but all of the individuals who went up to Walker and began firing, they have to be able to articulate why they shot their gun in the first place, right? Why did you point your gun at him? Why did you pull the trigger? The reason that they did it. Police officers are only allowed to use their gun to deadly physical force in certain circumstances, and that is to save their own life or to save the life of another person, whether it's a citizen or the life of another police officer. Those are the only instances where they're allowed to do that. So generally those are the times. So every time when those officers ran up to the scene, here's what they're going to have to answer before their Bureau of Investigation, right? I think it's called the BGI, Bureau of Community Crime Investigation. I think that's what it's called, Bureau of Crime Investigation. I think for Ohio, almost like their state police there. And the Attorney General is going to have to ask: is Officer X, why did you, when you ran up here, we noticed that you fired 8 times from your gun, which carries a round of 15 rounds. You fired 8 times. Why did you fire 8 times? They're going to have to explain. When I got there, I saw a gun in his hand, or I saw what I believed to be a gun in his hand. I saw what I believed to be him reaching into his waistband. This is what I saw. And every 8 of those trigger pulls was a response to that particular threat. I think that's going to be a really, really tough for all these officers to answer, because he immediately drops. Now, let me back up for a second. It appears as if, and this is something that I think that the chief is going to talk about. I don't know if I'll play that yet. That there is a still photos of the man Walker running, and then it appears as if he turns around, faces the officer, and then reaches his hands into his waistband or waistband area. Police officers are trained that individuals who reach into the waistband are then, this is where they keep their weapons at. So we want to make sure, that's why you hear officers yelling, where are your hands? Show me your hands, stop moving, put your hands up, things along those lines. Because they want to get them away from your waist, where generally firearms are secured, secreted, etc. So therefore, that's why they're doing that. So here's what the officers this is their frame of mind. So in the still photos that the chief as will mention in the press conference, is they don't know what he's doing. So they will, and this is a rapidly happening event, and they all have to be able to articulate this. They all have to be able to address the fact that this is what happened, that they all believe that this was, the man was reaching into his waistband. Okay. Or presenting some type of threat. Now, remember, the officers are already under the interpretation that a shot was fired. They were already under the impression the shot was fired. If he's got one gun, they hadn't seen it tossed, so he's got another gun. So this is the way that the officers are trained and what's going on in their minds. They get up to the scene and they continue on with that frame of thinking. So the chief here is absolutely correct, and obviously he's correct in explaining this, is that they're going to have to explain to the audience or to the grand jury or to the attorney general, to the investigators, why they pulled the trigger each of one of the times. And I think that's going to be a tough sell, because you see the man drop, and you'll see in the video that we're going to play is that the officer is one of the officers is motioning, or the video that we already played, that the officer is motioning for the individual, for his fellow officers to stop firing the guns. So if he's saying stop firing, then you got to stop firing. Let me say this from a training standpoint that I think officers should really begin to do moving forward is when they get to scenes like this, they really should start turning off the sirens. Was Jayland able to hear the commands and directions? Now, okay, listen, you shouldn't be running from the police in the first place. I totally get that point. Did he totally know what he was doing? But we had to take into consideration that he may not have been able to hear the commands to stop, to get on the ground, to show his hands, etc., because the sirens are blaring. He's got people screaming at him. Officers are screaming at him from multiple directions. He's got to be able to take in all this sensory information and all that. And the sirens simply aren't helping. So that's got to be something that I think is a training issue, that we got to get out of the car, turn off our sirens, and even turn it off for ourselves, right? Because there's crosstalk that we're doing, right? We want to be able to tell other officers to say, hey, listen, watch backdrops. Hey, there's a kid over there. Hey, watch that ditch. Hey, watch crossfire, right? So we've got to be able to communicate to each other, right? The dispatchers trying to talk to us, and our sirens are blaring as well. So we got to be able to watch that. So let's continue on with the press conference and see what else the chief has to say here. There's another question I want to play here.
Just last night, I spoke with the union president, and he told me that the officers are fully cooperating with the investigation.
I do have a problem with that. I think that they got to get, this happened on, what day does this happen? This was on a Monday, which was, I believe, June 27th, a Monday. And by July 3rd, they had not given statements yet. So I think that that's kind of unacceptable, in all honesty. I know they want to get themselves together and all that. They have to talk about it, right? This is not like a criminal investigation where they have the right to remain silent. It's an administrative investigation, and they have to speak about it, or they risk being termination. So they can definitely speed up the time frame in which they can get their story straight. They had 7 days, right? So if it happened on a Monday, get yourself together, speak with a lawyer, speak with your union reps, and by Thursday, Friday, you should be able to give a statement. But that's my estimation, and I think that lends more credence to the public. Why do these officers get so much time when my son or daughter is being questioned immediately? So I think that just helps build rapport and transparency.
Hang on. Go ahead.
Chief, the attorney for the family, Bobby DiCello, says that he spoke with you and you told him and you told members of the legal team and members of the family that based on your viewing of the video that you had not seen evidence that Jayland Walker did anything threatening that precipitated the gunfire. Your response to that?
So I've watched this video.
So this is where he's going to talk about the still photos. And so for the audio portion out there, you could not see his facial expressions when they were, in my estimation, misquoting what the chief said. But that was his facial expression when he was saying that that the chief saw no reason to shoot. The chief was kind of like, "Nah, I didn't say that." That was his facial expression. So he's going to answer this.
More times than I cared to. But I've watched it at least 40 times. when you see it in real time, it's very hard to distinguish what Mr. Walker is doing. In the still photos, there's a picture that appears to all of us that Mr. Walker is going down to his waist area. There is a photograph that appears Mr. Walker was turning towards the officer, and there is a picture that captures a forward motion of his arm. At the crime scene, after the officers were involved in the shooting, they immediately get sequestered from one another, and they are monitored. When the investigative team arrives, they do an individual walkthrough of the crime scene. Each officer, independent of each other, related that they felt that Mr. Walker had turned and was motioning and moving into a firing position. So, again, BCI is going to do the investigation. I'm not prejudging it, and I'll leave it there.
Please.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to understand a little better the gunshot from the car. Was there a bullet wound that exited the car from the inside of the bullet hole?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry, the other part is, was the gun found with the magazine removed in this car?
Yeah.
So the question about the gun, whether was there a wound, bullet holes, and all that. That's the question. What do we know about the shot that was fired from Walker?
The way in which that picture depicted where the gun was located and the way and the manner in which it was placed, officers are approaching the car on their body-worn camera, and it's capturing it as they are approaching. After the shot was fired, after the shooting occurred, we went back to the scene where we believe the shot was fired. A casing was discovered at that location, consistent with the firearm that Mr. Walker had in his vehicle. BCI will determine whether or not that casing came from the gun or not. And again, independent of anything we did, the ODOT camera captures what we believe to be a muzzle flash coming out of the car. Again, BCI will be determining whether or not that in fact is the case. Right.
Chief, as far as the chase goes, and wondering if this could have been avoided at all, could you talk at all about the protocol of the chase and the point of the gunshot being fired? Does that cancel any opportunity to call this chase off because of the gunshot?
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a question about the chase. Was the chase in line with protocol? And so it seems as if my interpretation of what this reporter is asking is that if we get a shot fired, and I hope I'm not misunderstanding what he's saying. If we get a shot fired, why don't we just cancel the chase, right? So we started the chase maybe for a headlight violation or a stop sign violation, and there's a shot fired, and it seems as if I'm going to rewind this so you guys can listen to it again, so I can listen to it again. Should we just stop chasing the guy? And that's, I think, intolerable.
Could you talk at all about the protocol of the chase and the point of the gunshot being fired? Does that cancel any opportunity to call this chase off because of the gunshot?
Okay, so I did misunderstand. So he's saying at the case, we can probably call this off because it's just a simple chase, but now he's fired the shot, so therefore, we're not going to cancel. We're going to continue on. That's what the reporter is asking, and I agree with that.
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. So the initial attempt to stop Mr. Walker, as you heard on the audio, was for an equipment violation and for a traffic violation. I'm not exactly sure what the equipment violation was or what the traffic violation was. We will find that out, or BCI will discover that during their investigation. What was going to be a routine traffic stop, which would probably result either in a warning or a citation being issued, turned into a pursuit. As Mr. Walker turned onto the entrance ramp to Route 8 and the shot is fired, that changes the nature of the contact. 40 seconds after the initiation of the traffic stop, a half a mile from the location of the traffic stop, you hear the gunshot and then everything else that I've just discovered. And again, that changes the whole nature of the traffic stop. It went from being a routine traffic stop to now a public safety issue. And then the pursuit continued. Yes.
Chief, have the officers involved viewed any of the video before they made their
And that will be determined by the Bureau of Criminal Investigation. Sir.
Chief, the initial officers on that approach to the car deployed tasers. Can we read into that? Does that mean they didn't see it?
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. I think that that's probably enough information. You guys can go over. I'll leave, once again, I'll have the link in the description here. So I think that that's really, really essential to what we got going on here. So I'm going to double down. Let me just wrap this up here. I'm going to double down, triple down, quadruple down on what I said before about making sure that our children, our youngsters, our teenagers, our godparents, our godsons, our all of our individuals are complying with the laws. That's the first thing we have to do. I've quoted, or at least I'm going to say what I believe is a quote from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in which he said that before we look at others, we have to look at ourselves. I'm going to stand by that. We want the police to look at themselves. Well, we have to look at ourselves, right? So we have to put in, we have to make the best decisions. First and foremost, we have to stop the interaction between the police and we have to stop the interaction between the police. We have to stop that, right? We have to stop putting ourselves in which we're in the direct line of sight. We're all trying to save the lives of our young black men. We're all trying to do that. And one of the first things we have to do is make sure that these two entities don't cross into each other's paths. And that seems to be lost for some reason. It seems to be a controversial statement. I want the police to do better. Yes. I want things to go better. I want things to be better and all that type of thing. But that does not mean that police that does not mean that we had to take all responsibility away from our children. They have to act right, drive right, not play loud music, wear their seatbelts, not be on their cell phones, have their equipment working, and all that type of thing. We have to do that. And until and unless we get to that particular place and point where we can point the finger at ourselves first and say this is what we were doing, then this is going to continue to be an ongoing problem. And it's not an unreasonable request to have our children, our youngsters, our teenagers, our young men, 30 and under, 30 and over, doing things and drawing the attention of the police. So therefore, and I told the story, I wrote this on my Facebook, one of the Facebook posts, so you can go to Captain Hunter's podcast on Facebook, you can read this post, right? So as I'm responding to this stuff about me being disgusting and all that kind of thing and victim blaming and all that, whatever. So there was a party that was going on in my neighborhood, right, in celebration of July 4th, and they're blaring the music. I mean, it was really, really loud. And it was so loud that if I would have a conversation with someone in my neighborhood, I would have had to raise my voice, or in my house, I would have had to raise my voice. That's how loud the music was. It was coming from at least a street over. That's how loud the music was. So here's exactly what I said, that in a situation like that, people are going to call the police. Now, I know it's July 4th, so more than likely they won't, right? It's not like they're blaring music all the time. So, but let's just go hypothetically. They call the police, and the police respond and say, hey, listen, your neighbors are complaining, please turn down the music. Every cop in the world, in America, has probably been through this. The music isn't too loud. You're being a racist, particularly if the cops dealt with this. If they've gone to a black or a Hispanic family, even the white family. Listen, the people have complained. No, they're not complaining. You're lying. You got nothing better to do. You're driving by, you heard it, and you want to turn it down. You're a liar, and all this kind of stuff. Oh, okay. Well, you can You can subpoena the records if you like, but I'm asking police to turn the music down because it's too loud. We're not going to turn it down. Next thing you know, an argument ensues, and an argument ensues into a fight, and into arrests are being made. And then when people are being pepper sprayed, people are being tasered, and little kids are being traumatized because the cops are here, and all this type of foolishness that's going on. People are being arrested and all this. All of that could have been avoided if you just would have turned the music, if you never would have had the music that loud in the first place, because you know the music isn't that loud. You know, isn't supposed to be that loud. You know that that's correct. So you got the music up way too loud. When the police come, you don't want to turn it down. You think that they're lying to you. Oh, okay. All of this could have been avoided if you just never had the music that loud in the first place, or if you just would comply with the officer, right? The whole scenario that I just laid out. No arrest, no traumatization of the kids, no pepper spray, people cleaning out their eyes, no shutdown of your party. None of that would have happened if you just would have just followed the rules in the first place, and if you just complied with the officers when they responded. Same principle goes with driving. Just pull over. Have your stuff legit in the first place. When and if you're asked to do something, just do it. You can comply now, complain later. If you think you've been racially profiled, if you think that the officer was out of line, if you think all this type of stuff, then you sue them. Not an unreasonable request. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions, and all that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really, really appreciate it. Make sure you share this video, rate it, subscribe it, all that kind of good stuff. Much love and peace, everyone.